Hello, dear listeners, and welcome to this new episode. Actually, you have found an appropriate place to improve your English and your vocabulary in particular. And let's see what we have got today. For the first word, we have consider. The stress is on the second syllable. Consider. Consider. Consider is a verb, and it means to think about something carefully before deciding or acting. Imagine a person standing at a crossroads, thinking deeply, looking at two signs, not moving yet. At that time, that pause is consider. And another imagery, for example, Ali wanted to study abroad. He didn't decide immediately. He considered the cost, the language, and the future. Now we have some synonyms for consider. We have think about, take into account, reflect on. Keep in mind, dear listeners, that consider doesn't mean decide directly. You think first, decide later. That's considering. And we have some collocations for consider. We have consider carefully, consider seriously, consider an option, consider the consequences, and consider a proposal. Now for the examples, we have please consider my suggestion, and I am considering applying for a master's degree. And lastly, we must consider the consequences before acting. That's consider, and let's move on to the next word. We have viable. Viable. The stress is on the first syllable. Viable. Viable means possible and likely to work successfully. If something is viable, it can be done and can succeed. Viable is an adjective, and now we have some synonyms for viable. We have feasible, practical, workable. We have possible as well, but possible is weaker, but viable suggests realistic success. And some collocations for viable, we have a viable alternative, a viable approach, a viable strategy, and a long-term viable solution. And for the examples, guys, we have studying online is a viable option for many students. And the company found a viable solution to the problem. Lastly, without funding, the project is not viable. Alright, guys, let's jump to the next word. We have facilitate. Facilitate. The stress is on the second syllable. Facilitate. Facilitate is a verb, and it means to make something easier or help it happen. Now we have some similar words to facilitate. We have enable, assist, make easier, promote. And some common collocations, we have facilitate learning, facilitate access, facilitate growth, facilitate understanding. Now we have some example sentences for facilitate. The first one we have technology can facilitate language learning, and the teacher's role is to facilitate discussion, not dominate it. And clear instructions facilitate understanding. Imagine that the teacher didn't speak all the time. She asks good questions and uses activities to facilitate student interaction. Facilitate is a very good word, dear listeners. And now let's go to another word, which is determine. Determine. The stress is on the second syllable. Determine. Determine is a verb, and it means to decide something after careful thought, or to find out something exactly. Keep in mind, dear listeners, that consider means to think about something, but determine is to reach a decision or exact result. Now you have some synonyms for determine, which are decide, conclude, establish, identify, and some collocations we have determine factors, determine results, determine eligibility, and determine outcomes. For the examples, guys, we have the test will determine your level, and researchers aim to determine the cause of the problem, and success is largely determined by motivation. Now look at this memory imagery, dear listeners. For example, a judge listening carefully, then hitting the gavel and saying, "This is the final decision." Actually, when he says this is the final decision, it is determination. And for example, when the teacher gave a placement test, the results determined the students' levels. This is determine. And now for the next word, we have designate. Designate. The stress is on the first syllable, designate. Designate is a verb, and it means to officially choose or name someone or something for a particular role, purpose, or status. Imagine that a sign being put on a door that says, "Officially assigned." That sign is a designation, actually. Now for the synonymous, we have appoint, assign, officially name. Dear listeners, please consider that designate is a more formal than choose or pick. Now for the collocations, we have designate a role, designate a person, designate an area, designate a day, and designate authority. And for the examples, we have he was designated as the project manager, and this room is designated for meetings. The government designated the site as protected land. Just imagine that during the project, for example, the teacher designates one student as the group leader to organize the discussion. This is actually designation. It's just like choosing, but designate is more formal and it's used in academic situations. That's it, ladies and gentlemen. Now for the next word, we have agonize. Agonize. The stress is on the first syllable. Agonize. Agonize is a verb, and it means to worry or think about something very deeply and for a long time, often feeling stressed or upset. It suggests mental pain or struggle, not just normal thinking. Just keep in mind that consider is a calm thinking, but agonize is a painful and emotional thinking. Now we have some similar words to agonize. We have worry deeply, struggle with, be torn. This word is actually used in informal situations. And for the collocations, we have agonize over a decision, agonize for days and weeks, agonize endlessly, and agonize choice. Now for the example sentences, we have he agonized over the decision for weeks. She was agonizing about her exam results. Choosing between the two offers was agonizing. And you can ask someone else, you can say, have you ever agonized over an important decision? That's it, dear listeners. And for the seventh word, we have deviate. Deviate. The stress is on the first syllable. Deviate. It means to move away from what is normal, planned, or expected. It usually suggests leaving the original path, rule, or plan. Imagine that a straight road, then a car suddenly turning into onto a small side road. This is actually deviation. Or you could imagine that, dear listeners, for example, the teacher had a clear plan, but students asked many questions, so the lesson deviated from the original topic. Just keep in mind that we always use from after deviate. Now we have some synonyms for deviate. We have depart from, stray from, and diverge from. And for the collocations, we have deviate from the norm, deviate from the plan, deviate from the original idea, and deviate significantly. Now for the example sentences, we have the discussion deviated from the main topic, and pilots mustn't deviate from the flight path. And lastly, the teacher slightly deviated from the lesson plan. That's it, dear learners. And for the last word, we have aviate. The stress is on the first syllable. Aviate. Aviate. Aviate is totally different from deviate, but I put this word for you just in order not to be misunderstood by you with deviate. It actually means to fly an aircraft or to operate an aircraft while in the air. One synonym for aviate is fly. We have some examples for aviate. For example, the pilot focused on aviating the aircraft during the storm. And another example, we have learning to aviate requires intensive training. Just remember that aviate means to fly, but deviate means to move away from what's normal or leaving the original path. Alright, dear listeners, and now it's time to use all the 8 words in one short story. And listen carefully. This is the short story. Ali had to consider whether studying abroad was a viable option for his future. The university advisor tried to facilitate the decision by explaining the requirements, which helped Ali determine the best path. Eventually, he was designated as a scholarship candidate, but he still agonized over leaving his family. In the end, he decided not to deviate from his long-term goals and imagined himself one day learning to aviate as a pilot of his own destiny. That's it, dear listeners. That's the end of this lesson. Hope you the best.